into the conversation. I think brand communication is going to change in the year 2020.
I think this COVID time has been quite challenging, quite exciting to say the least. I think a lot of the brands have had to reevaluate how they want to communicate and what they want to communicate to the end consumer or to their potential consumers. I think we've always gone after something called share of voice traditionally as marketers, but I think now it's going to become more of a share of empathy. How can you actually empathize with the current scenario, your customers, the people who sort of are a part of your entire stakeholder group. So I think from that perspective, brands who do not overtly sell themselves, but actually try becoming a part of a conversation or try, empathizing with the end consumer would be the ones that actually come out stronger. It need not be that every brand is doing a CSR activity per se, but I think it's very important that brands don't go overtly overboard selling themselves. Let your customers get drawn to you as much as possible, but still try being top of mind by communicating.
And today have been talking about ROI in advertising. So
Right.
as we move forward, will we see a dip in brand building by organizations?
Actually not, right? Because the advertising and brand building are a part of the entire ROI driven proposition that we talk about, right? Like if you don't do any one of them, you start getting hit in some way or the other, right?
Right.
So again, if you understand what is ROI made up of, it's made up of brand love, it's made up of your customers, it's made up of the entire life cycle of people who work for the brand. I think, and it's made up of a lot of the communication that actually goes out to people to actually believe what you're selling to them, right? And
Yes.
again, marketers, if you stop, again, as I was saying earlier, if you stop communicating, you stop putting on communication, people start forgetting you. While obviously the spends might have come down during the COVID time because people have been slightly more judicious on what they're spending on. So, mainline spends have come down drastically, print has come down, radio has come down. But if brands are actually spending on digital platforms, for example, to at least keep the top of mind recall being there, your awareness being driven in some way or the other, I think that will still drive ROI for them. It's not a function of how much they spend. I think it's a function of where they spend the money. So rather than spending on large properties which probably might not have given them ROI, now they start spending on things which probably drive more business for them. So again, spending on e-commerce, spending on conversions, spending on sales. So I mean, I personally believe that it's not the best decision for brands to stop advertising or stop promoting, because again, you don't want to lose out on what you've already built over the past so many years. Because again, we all know for a fact that it will end soon. Again, soon could be 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, but it will end, right, at some point in time. So why should you stop communicating or stop advertising? There's no real reason for that.
To you, which sectors of the economy are more likely to invest more in advertising, and also how would they be dividing their ad spends? Towards which channels do you think they would be focusing on more?
Perspective, I think FMCG for sure will continue spending, because a lot of FMCG also has many essentials as a part of it. So brands who are in the essential space will continue spending, and they will see an uptake in consumption also going forward. I think grocery stores have opened up, malls are opening up very soon. So in that sense, buying habits and buying patterns might go back to normalcy. But obviously, I think thankfully, because e-commerce has already opened up like a month ago, deliveries are happening as per normalcy. People are spending a lot on home grooming products, on products that help make them better. So it could be again exercising goods, could be FMCG when it comes to food. It could also be a lot of brands, a lot of people actually buying your personal care products. Again, could be shampoos, could be conditioners, could be soaps. We're seeing makeup having a large uptake also, because I think makeup is more of a feel good factor. So people want to feel good in this bad time. So even like a simple pop of a red color on your lips sort of gives you that experience of feeling much better, be it for a Zoom call or be it for a house party with your friends. But I think what's important is that people want to feel nice about themselves. Sorry, my dog bang. But from the perspective, I think of the categories that won't end up spending too much is your the entire hospitality space obviously will take a long time to get back to normalcy. The entire travel and tourism is going to be taking a big hit in that sense. So I think those are a couple of sectors that might take a long time to get back to normal. And I mean, again, as we know that, many restaurants are shut down, for example, because we have no idea as to when people will be okay coming back into restaurant, while Zomato and Swiggy are still delivering, but it's not the same quantum of what they probably saw when they actually had physical footfalls coming into their restaurants. So I think hospitality and like the entire travel space will take a long time to come back to normalcy. But I think from an FMCG space, a consumer product space, lifestyle products, I think those will start coming back into normalcy. And because again, print, as we know, no one is buying newspapers for the fear of again contracting the coronavirus through paper, right? Because apparently the virus stays on the paper for quite a long time and it exchanges multiple hands, for example. So I think all of the papers have become e-papers now. We all get PDFs with Times of India, Midday, Mumbai Mirror on our phones, right? So brands obviously are not going to be spending too much on print. So my estimation is that maybe that 20% on digital might become a 30 and 35% on digital going forward. TV might still continue being the number one share of spends for most brands, because it is an expensive platform in itself to sort of advertise on. But I surely see that print coming down substantially going forward, and potentially digital becoming number two in the order. Yeah.
Right. So now, new age organizations, they usually spread out of their core to have content teams, production teams, to do everything in-house. So will we see this trend continuing, or brands are now going to outsource their advertising?
Outsourcing model still works a lot more economical for brands because, is to actually build a team in-house takes a lot of time. And I think as brands, what the brands really want to focus on is to get their product right. It's to get their service right. And I believe that brands don't want to spend too much of time trying to build a team from scratch for content writing, media buying, production. While you have specialists within the team of the brand who understand each of these nuances, for them to completely in-house all the services, I think won't be the right thing to do, because it's not like brands are always making a video all throughout the year, right? So does it make sense to have a full team on board onto your roster, paying salaries, but not having too much work to do, right? So, which is why coming to an agency like ours as per requirement makes a lot more sense from a financial perspective, because they come to us when they have a project, when they have a brief, and then they have a focused team who's working on that one brief, day in and day out to get the client what they require. So I personally think that, in-housing, while some services can be in-house, for example, like again, as I was saying that, certain services can be in-house, but having a full-fledged team in-house doesn't make financial sense to me.
Right. And what is your plan to, overcome these challenges?
The biggest challenge for the agency has been that, obviously many brands have cut down on their overall retainers. They've cut down on their overall spending. So for us as an agency, as a company, becomes, how do you retain the team? How do you continue, having the same team on board without letting them go, right? So that's been one big challenge for us in terms of, maintaining what we had pre-COVID. Obviously, like, for us, Touchwood, it hasn't been that bad. Like, as in, we've tried to get a lot more new accounts on board, which has sort of made up for the lack of spends from the previous accounts. But just keeping that in mind, obviously for us, it's been challenging to see how we can reshuffle our teams within the company itself so that everyone is kept busy and no one's sitting free, because again, certain key functions like say video production has obviously come down substantially. Media spends had come down again substantially, but now it's back to normal. A lot of our content writer designers didn't have too much work. So I think the challenge for us was that how do we get everybody to work on something or the other? So be it small projects, large projects, whatever came our way is something that we took on board. So from a company agency perspective, I think that was the key challenge, saying that, how do you maintain what you have currently and not have to let go of any of your employees? But I think from a brand perspective, it comes down to saying, how do you reevaluate your spends and where do you really put your money for the marketing perspective? So what will actually drive the ROI we spoke about earlier, and what will necessarily give you a bang for the buck, because again, it's difficult to justify frivolous spends. It's difficult to justify, awareness-led spends at some point in time. So I think it's more about conversions. So yeah, I think from the brand perspective, it comes down to saying, where do you put your money, and actually back calculate and see how you can drive business from that. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Akshay. We had a lovely, insightful conversation.